started writing in 2008 and I didn't publish until 2015. I published my first and second books that year. So anorexia, it's not as common as some of the others. I mean, a lot of people with eating disorders will do different practices, whether it's binging and purging, or a straight person who is anorexic is just restricting their food. If I can convince myself that one day or one time I can go 12 hours without eating, tomorrow I might convince myself, oh, I can go 12 hours without eating again. And that's not healthy for me.
Welcome, everyone, to the One Moment Podcast. We have a special guest on today, and I'm going to be straight with you. Never had anybody of this young lady's caliber on this show, so today's going to be very interesting and very special. Now, here's the interesting thing. She's from right outside of Denver, Colorado. One of our co-hosts, Trevor, also known as Trev for short, is actually from Pueblo West, Colorado. And he would hate to be missing this at this moment.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Right. I might have to text him and be like, hey, man, you need to get old. You need to just put your cancer treatment on hold. Tell the doctor you need to. I'm kidding.
Well, yeah, we're all experiencing crazy winter weather here with 60-degree days. So we're not sure what's going on.
Right. So listen, you got over 20 books. Like, when did you start writing? I'm curious. I have to ask.
Right. I started writing in 2008 and I didn't publish until 2015. I published my first book, my first and second books that year. And I just kind of became obsessed with writing. I just loved it so much. And I had the idea for my first initial series, which the first two books were a part of, and then just kept the ball rolling from there. And it became a little bit of an obsession. So it's been a lot of fun.
I love it. It's one of those things that if you love what you do, it's never a job.
Right. Exactly.
No. So I'm curious. All right. You started writing in 2008, first published in 2015. That was your first two books. And we were talking about before the show, before the live, we were talking about one of the series. I think you said the first series of your books was related to eating disorders. How many books was in that series?
There's 4 books in the series, which sometimes causes a problem for people. I've had people come back and say, well, I wanted everything in one book. And I thought, you know what, describing like becoming or how, I don't know even how you say, describing coming down with an eating disorder, describing developing an eating disorder is something very hard to describe. There are so many different issues for many people, and even for one person, in that formation of that brain chemistry or psychology in your mind. And then being in the disease and what that feels like, and then recovery of the disease. It doesn't happen overnight, and I couldn't explain it in one book. It just felt too rushed. So it is 4 books. So it's a little bit of a commitment, but I feel like you get that in-depth character background and viewpoint of just what someone's experiencing and the people around her. I mean, it not only affects the person with the disease, but also those people around them. So that's very complex issues. But I really wanted to show the hope that can come. It felt like life ending to me at the time. And I thought I had like thrown my life off course and I would never get back. And would just felt insurmountable amount of things that I had to fix or I had to fix. Still that thinking is not quite right, or overcome in recovery. And I wanted to just show that it was possible and it doesn't have to be debilitating or life. I mean, it was life altering and some things for the good, but I was able to redirect or get my life back, not on track, but back and live in a recovered, better state of health.
Wow, that is beautiful. And not the fact that you went through the eating disorder, that sucks, but to talk about it and put put your experience in a book, in 4 books to be exact, and to emphasize and stress the part of recovery from eating disorders. That is huge. And eating disorders is, from my knowledge of eating disorders, is very similar to stimulant use disorders, cocaine and methamphetamines. There's a very significantly high relapse rate over when it comes to those diagnoses. And anorexia, bulimia, purging, I think, is another one. And I'm not too expert with the eating disorders, but I do know there's like a few main ones. So tell me about the one that you had.
Right. So anorexia, it's not as common as some of the others. I mean, a lot of people with eating disorders will do different practices, whether it's binging and purging, or a straight person who is anorexic is just restricting their food. But many people devolve into other types of or other behaviors with eating disorders. That's very common. And you're right. I mean, it is treated because of the brain chemistry. It's treated very much like a cocaine or drug addiction. I got into recovery and my psychiatrist was like, "Well, I treat cocaine addicts and anorexics." And I was like, "Wait, I'm not a drug addict." Like, that is not me. I chose this addiction. I chose this mental health problem because I don't do drugs or drink alcohol, right? I was that goody two shoes who wasn't going to do that, right? Um, but I needed some outlet to stop feeling the way I was feeling. So that became over exercising, planning everything I ate, deciding, oh, well, I'll just skip this meal and it'll be fine. And I'll just skip this next meal and I'll only eat lettuce and all these weird things that come along with. And really, it's just to mask trying not to feel however you're feeling. I, kind of had this vision in my head of what I was supposed to do, what I was supposed to be, the grades I was supposed to make. And I felt like I was failing in all of that. So to compensate, I thought, oh, well, if I look good, or if I'm thin, or if I can work out, or, if I if I can achieve whatever body style I thought I could achieve, then I would be better. I would look better at least, right? But that really, I mean, you have some control in the beginning, but it's just an illusion of control. And very soon your brain chemistry is changed to the point where you can't change it back. Like, even when I wanted to get healthier, I could not mentally or physically make myself like be healthier. And that's what was the scariest part, I think, and then you think, "Oh, I want to," and then, 2 minutes later, you're like, "No, I'm okay. I can keep going the way I am." And, so it was very fast, and I mean, some people struggle for a very long time. Mine was very fast. I got very thin very fast, and I nearly died. And, grateful to my one friend who took me to the emergency room and said, "You are not okay." Um, so I think, unfortunately for me, I had to reach that point. I was in such denial about it, and I didn't want to feel all the things that I needed to face in order to recover, but was forced to. And I'm grateful for that, I guess. In the end, I feel like I had a crash course in learning life skills and emotional skills, and I was forced to do that in order to survive. So in that way, I guess it was helpful. I solved a lot of problems at one time. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sitting here laughing because I am just the way you're describing it, and I could tell you're an author because the way you're describing it, right? I can mentally picture everything just happening. No, and because we are live and because we do talk about mental health. Disclaimer here: if anybody who is watching or listening to this show, if you are triggered by any means, please seek help immediately. If you need help, you have 988, which is the local national crisis suicide hotline. You also have local emergency departments and local crisis centers. Now, if you're in on the other side of the ocean in Spain, Australia, UK, you go to a local emergency department or a local crisis center of your choosing. I cannot give you any resources from over yonder in that neck of the woods because I do not know. So, Thank you for letting me get the disclaimer out of the way. I apologize about that.
No,
Um,
I that's very important.
no, no, yeah, absolutely. I mean, just knowing that there's help out there and there's resources, and that's although we pride ourselves on being a resource, we're not you know, people who give clinical or medical advice, especially through the podcast. Um, so eating disorder, how were you when you started realizing, or how old were you when the eating disorder started?
I was
As you look
20.
back now.
Yeah, I was 20. Well, I guess I could say I saw signs from when middle school to high school. I would skip lunches when I was at school. Um, but it didn't feel like a major problem. It just felt like, oh, I'm managing my weight. And those were little signs that, hey, that's really not normal. If you're hungry, you should eat. And I was never a heavy person, so it wasn't like I was really needed to diet.
Right.
Um, it was just a coping mechanism and a way to distract myself from life. um, if I look back, I can really see some um, activities that I was doing that were along those lines, but I wouldn't have said I was in the disease. But I probably, those tendencies, I guess. But it wasn't until college, which is very late for someone to develop anorexia. Usually it's around puberty, 13 to 16 or something like that. I was just overwhelmed. I wasn't making the grades I wanted to. My parents didn't think I was making the grades I wanted to. I wasn't, achieving in romantic relationships like I wanted to, and I just kind of felt like the world was coming down on me. So, I just decided that, hey, well, if I'm thinner and I work out more, then I'll be better. And that did not help at all. I mean, it helped for a little while. And people are like, oh, you look so good. But it wasn't, it was very temporary.
I heard somebody say the other, I think it was yesterday or day before that. I was listening to an audio book, and I don't know, it might have been this past weekend because I've been doing some audio book trainings too, at work. Um, but he said something about these desires for and I forget which word they chose. Basically self-fulfillment, right? Like we're self-pleasing, right? They said that that is a bottomless pit. And so the way they described it is kind of like brings it to my thought process on what you were just saying. It might have worked temporarily, but it wasn't a permanent solution or a long-term solution. It's kind of like drugs and alcohol, you know.
Right. You get the high, you get the buzz, you get some, you know, relief what a chemically from your brain chemistry being off or depressed or how you want it to feel. And but then you come to the low and it just doesn't work anymore.
Mm. Now, how long did you stay in that active, I was about to say active addiction, active diagnosis, like where the anorexia was considered active?
Only about 7 months. Like I said, I lost a lot of weight really fast. I lost 45 pounds. I was very, very thin. Like I was thinner than a 10-year-old. Yeah. And it's interesting now looking back because I am a mom and I have friends whose kids are having problems with eating disorders and they're describing exactly what I went through at much heavier weights than I was even when I went to treatment. And they're describing like the effects on their heart and their organs. And you're just robbing, your heart is a muscle. And if you don't have enough calories or fat to burn, eventually your body's going to start burning your heart and your other organs. And things they're putting kids in hospitals for now, I'm like, wow, I should have been in a hospital like way before I ever went to the hospital. So that's pretty scary. And it's pretty scary that your mind can convince yourself that you are okay. Like I was completely had shut that reality portion off. So
Wow, that is sad to hear.
And I lied about it. I mean, it was just like a drug addict. I mean, all my friends were like, "Oh, yeah," and I came back from summer to go to the next year's school, and they're like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Oh, no, I was just sick over the summer. I lost some weight. I'm fine." Just lied about it the whole time. And like, I don't know who I was thinking I was lying to. I'm sure everybody, it was completely obvious to everyone, but I just remained in my little bubble and tried to keep going.
And it's sad because you have social standards, right? That is telling people, and I think it affects more so women than it does men. And you have, right, social standards that tells us that we have to look a certain way, we have to be a certain way, we have to think a certain way, we have to act a certain way, we have to believe a certain way. And so I can see how that can, increase one's chances for eating disorder, bulimia, anorexia, binging and purging. Um, and it's sad because then I question, if I take an existential approach to life, and the older I get, I fall more under the existential philosophy piece of life. How authentic are we being to ourselves?
Right. I mean, there's so many ways your brain can trick you into thinking, or you can trick yourself knowingly or not knowingly. And then once you do it one time, it's that much easier for your brain to go to that gate. I feel like I could look in the mirror when I was at my thinnest and not see that I was skin and bones. Like 1 second I could see it and the next I could blink and I just looked as heavy as the next person next to me. So um that body dysmorphia is it's plays a factor too.
Yeah. Now, let me do ask you this, okay? I'm I'm curious because you have a lot of this body dysmorphia that's going on. At least that's what they're trying to say nowadays. And I'm curious to know from your perspective, uh, how else do you feel like body dysmorphia plays out?
Well, it's interesting because I've talked to people on both in the spectrum, like, I couldn't see that I was really thin, like, to me, it looked normal,
Mm,
because my brain somehow had normalized that, right? And I've talked to people who have lost good amounts of weight and lost down to a weight that is healthy or healthier for your body, and they still say that they don't see themselves as the new thin self. They still see themselves as the heavier self when they look in. So it's two sides of a coin, but it's the same. And I don't know if it's relating to how you feel emotionally or it's just how your brain is programmed to see yourself. um yeah, so I think
just
either side of that needs to be fixed, right?
right. No, that's an interesting take, and I never thought about it like that, especially from body dysmorphia. Is it the way your brain is thinking, or is it an emotional attachment with self? Right. Never would I have ever thought about it from those 2 angles. I would have just thought about it, from a pure psychological perspective, right? Like, hey, is the mentality, perception is all cognitive, and there you have it, right? But to hear you throw in the emotional piece of it, that's interesting. I mean, I don't think I've read a theory yet on eating disorders and body dysmorphia where it really where for me anyways, again, I'm not an expert, where it really touches on the emotional, that emotional relationship with the self.
Right, so are you still holding on to what used to be in order to protect yourself from something, in order not to see what's really going on because you don't really wanna see what's going on? It's that emotional, psychological, cognitive, I'm sure, but some of that may be, like, if you're holding on to your prior version of yourself or what you prior felt
Mm.
about yourself, maybe if you don't have like good self-confidence or you're doubting your self-confidence or you're doubting your skills or you're doubting yourself, like you're holding on to a version of yourself physically that wasn't as healthy in order to say no, I'm not as good, right? Or I'm not as good as I think I am because I still look XYZ. I don't That's such a complex thing, I think.
And I can see that. I can really see that. Well, all the factors that's going into the situation, right? Into the person's thought process with the body dysmorphia, with the emotional piece of how they used to be versus how they want to be versus how social standards are. I mean, I could see the whole intersection of it, and it makes sense. It really does. So let me ask you this, right? Because you spent 7 months in anorexia. Do you struggle? Do you still struggle with some of the old ideals, or
I like to be thin. I do. I mean, and like to be active. I'm a runner. Um, so, I don't think I'll ever lose that. But I never like I have committed, just like an alcoholic commits to not drinking again, I have committed to never skipping a meal again for the rest of my life. I mean, you do it one day at a time, but I don't think I'll ever change that. Like if we're on a trip and, we're on a big airplane and I'll somebody will say, "Oh, you don't really need any food." I'm like, "No, no, no. I need food." Because if I can convince myself that one day or one time I can go 12 hours without eating, tomorrow I might convince myself, "Oh, I can go 12 hours without eating again." And that's not healthy for me. So, I mean, I don't want to take for granted that portion of myself, and I don't want to play with it. I'm not interested in going back there in any shape or form, so I just don't do it.
yeah, no, and I think the way you explained it right is, it is a one day at a time process. Sometimes it's a moment at a time. Like,
Yeah.
oh,
In the
that's
beginning, definitely it is, right?
right. No, 100%. So let me ask you this then, right? Because when we have somebody who's on here and they are in recovery from substance use, I always ask them the same question. I don't know. Maybe it's uh, m- maybe it fits, maybe it doesn't. What do you feel like was your burning bush moment? That's where the light bulb came on when you said, "Okay, uh, I'm done. Like I am absolutely done." And did that burning bush moment happen at the same time when you wrote a book, or some
No,
shape?
it was many years later when I wrote a book. My burning bush moment, I tried to eat something, I got very sick, like, my heart was racing, like, I don't know, I was trying to count it 100, 200 beats a minute, and then all of a sudden it plummeted to, like, 30 beats a minute, and I called my friend, I was like, "I'm not okay, you need to come get me." She took me to the campus um, urgent care, and the doctor there, I shouldn't say this because people that went to college with me will know this person. But anyway, we used to call her Dr. Useless because she wasn't great bedside manner. And she said to me, "We can't help you. You did this to yourself." And brutal, but honest, right? And probably they could have helped me. They could have given me saline or something, I feel like, but I don't know. Maybe they couldn't. Maybe I was like past the point. Like they did nothing for me except put me in a room and said, "Eat something." um, and well, and the counselor came and she helped me get in a recovery center and call my parents and all of those things that I needed to do. But it was true. Like I had done it. I mean, I felt blamed, so I wasn't really happy with the doctor, but at the same time, it was kinda true. Like, I had actively sought out something to relieve my emotional depression, emotional turmoil. I didn't wanna feel the way I was feeling, and I actively sought it out until the point where I changed my brain chemistry so I couldn't think any differently. I mean, I think that's just how the brain works, whether it's like habit or however I whatever I did to my brain to change that brain chemistry. But it is a disease, like it's a mental illness. So it was and it wasn't my fault, right? At that point, it wasn't my fault anymore because I could not do anything to get myself out of it. So I didn't write my book until 20 years later. when I was kind of looking back and thinking, wow, this is my life. Like, and this could be important to other people that are experiencing this.
Wow. So my first thought process was that doctor was pretty rude. Like,
Yeah,
come
I
on.
thought so too. It was very brutal and it was kind of mean. But at the time I was like, she's right. But the next thought was like, explicative, she's right. But I'm not going to let this thing beat me was my next thought. Like I was lying there like, no, I'm not going to die. I'm not going to let this thing beat me. So that became my enemy. My disease became my enemy, became my nemesis. I was going to do anything that people told me to do I was just going to do what they told me to do because I wasn't going to let this beat me. I was not going to die from this. So it kind of was that one thing that I was like, okay, this woman is going to be wrong. I am going to beat this. So, and I didn't beat it. Like tons of people helped me beat it. So.
Well, that takes me to my next question then, right? Because recovery is the way I typically like to explain it, right? Is not a one stop shop type of deal, regardless of how somebody gets into recovery. And it doesn't matter like which type of recovery, right? Um, Recovery is a series of steps that we take each day, every single day, one day at a time. And so what did it take for you to get into recovery?
So I went into an inpatient system, which was a 5 days, 24 hours, live in system. And really it was only 5 days because that's what my insurance covered, but it got me like stable physically. Um, and I was on a ward with drug addicts and alcoholics, and I was very much initially like, wait a minute, I'm not like these people. But there were eating disorder people on my ward too. I think one of the other things that really struck me in that experience was that there was a woman there. She was 65-ish, 70, um, and she was still dealing with the same thing. Like she was like me. She was anorexic like me. And I was like, wait, I could be 65 and still dealing with this. Like I did not want to, I wanted to kick this now. I wanted to kick this for good and not have to come back. So, and then I went to a halfway house program that was like we lived with other people with eating disorders, and we were in a day program that was therapy, group therapy, individual therapy. We had to go to anonymous meetings every day. So just like Alcoholics Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous is there for people with eating disorders. So we committed to do that every day. We committed to staying on a certain food plan. Unfortunately, like alcohol or drugs isn't just like not doing it. Obviously, you have to eat. So you commit to a certain plan, and everybody keeps everybody on their plan. I got a sponsor in the anonymous program. That was very important. And it was 2 to 3 years before I would have considered myself like really stabilized, basically, I think, emotionally and physically and mentally.
I did not know until today that they had halfway houses for people who struggle with eating disorders. And I work on the inpatient unit.
Oh, wow. Well, the other thing that really helped me is because I was only inpatient for 5 days and then that did the 30-day outpatient program. I got to volunteer on the inpatient unit that I had been in, and they let me volunteer with the therapy groups, and I did that for 2 months. So that was like really helped me get more stabilized and back. It was a work environment, but not a work environment. Um, to where I felt like uh, and I made some really good friends. Like my sponsor became one of the nurses on the ward, and um, it was just a wonderful experience to be like helping other people that were not as far along as me, even though I was only like 2 months in. So I feel like it gave me a really good foundation for my recovery.
Hmm. Wow. And so 20 years later, you write a book. So I have to ask then, right? And I don't know if you've already answered, apologies for my forgetfulness on this one. What was the burning bush moment for the book, for the first series?
I think it was my high school reunion. Like I was think it was my 20th high school reunion, and I was looking back and thinking about my friends and what I'd gone through, like high school, right after high school and college, and my relationships, and just how that affected and shaped my whole life, and thinking about those situations. And it just, it kind of just came together. And that's when I just started using social media and was connecting with all those people and having all those memories, I think. Um, it kind of just all came together for me. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I wasn't really
Oh,
using my brain for anything during the day. I was just had 3 young kids under the age of 3, and so in the evening, I just started writing the story, and it was about a character like me who develops anorexia. It was much more sexier and fun than my life actually was. I had to make it fun. I mean, it
right.
was, yeah. You're not gonna read it if the whole thing's depressing, right?
No,
Um,
100%, 100%. I mean, oh, wow. That is so, oh, wow. I love the way you described it, though. I was sitting there and I was just decided to start writing about anorexia and this person with anorexia, and it was a whole lot more sexier. And I'm like, oh, wow. I've thought about doing that too. Self, putting some of my life experience in a book. But I was talking to an author yesterday, and I am not a look. You, I will read a book for school, and that's about it, right? I will read a book for spiritual purposes. That's it. I will read a book for uh, if it's like a Medicaid manual or something like that. Like, I have to understand some regulations. I will read that, right? If I need to understand a theory or a specific type of skill or technique, I will read that. But I'm not a reader, right? I'm not a reader. And yeah, I'm not a real big writer. And so I don't know, like if I wanted to write a book about my recovery and my personal experiences, how would I get the motivation to even write?
Well, everybody does it different ways. Like I did this as a fictionalized account, and I really just started writing like a screenplay, like a story in my head, and it was really just very entertaining to me, because I would do it in the evenings after my kids went to bed instead of watching TV or Netflix or whatever, um, when my brain had downtime. So, but I think you can do it so many different ways. I mean, so many people would do autobiographies or memoirs or hate to say self-help, but it's more like your journey, a journey story, right? I like to call them that. Um, and you can do it in a nonfiction way too. So it doesn't have not one way or is right or the other way is right. I think it's whatever feels comfortable. And it's funny because I talk to so many authors. I have a podcast too. And they're always like, oh, I wrote from when I was young and I loved it always. I did not. Like, I did not like writing. Um, and I did technical writing for my job, and I liked that, but I would have never said I was a writer or liked writing until I started writing this story, and then after then, I just loved it. I could not stop, so maybe I'm addicted to writing.
Well, it's better to be addicted to that versus trying to hold up a standard.
Right, right. There are levels, right? We can say there
Right.
are levels.
Right. Right.
Some healthier than others.
Oh, yeah, no, 100%. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, listen, I'm gonna have to bust your chops, okay, on this one, because you can't just mention a podcast on this one and not tell us the name, where to find you, or anything. Like, I mean, come on, right? And then you also have to tell us what you talk about. Like, what is it based around? What is it about?
Right. So the name of the podcast is Finding the Magic Book Podcast. And I really started as Finding the Magic because kind of my author brand is centered around this thought of things around us and people themselves are magical. Just technology, a beautiful sunset, a fun book, your own creative imagination is magical to me. So, but I started hosting authors just to talk about they're books mostly. Like, we don't talk about the writing craft or how to write. I mean, sometimes that comes in, but it's not a major portion. Like, my point is just to introduce books to people who may want to read them. So mostly fiction genres. I do talk sometimes people come on with poetry or biographies, but mostly fiction. Almost all the genres except for like hard horror, which I call. I was telling somebody I wrote vampire books, and they're like, "That's horror." I'm like, "No, it's vampire fantasy. It's not horror." They're like, "It's horror." I'm like, "Okay." I talk about vampire horror. Um, yeah, not erotica, but anything else basically. Just have fun learning about different people's books, worlds, or characters.
That is so awesome. Yeah, the person, I think it's the same person that I've been working with for the last year who got you connected to us. And when I first met with the individual, our first conversation, the individual asked me, he said, Kev, I got a whole bunch of authors, because he was telling me like what he does, and I'm like, okay. And he's like, I want to get some people signed up to be on your show. Can I ask, like, what do you, specifically talk about? And I told him, I'm like, anything related to mental health. If you feel like it's related to mental health, send them our way. So yeah, no, and kind of like our burning bush too for what we do. We were all Trevor, Josh, Ruben, and myself. We were all talking, and we said we wanted to do something to help people. You know, we can work in the field and we can do what it is that we do in the field, right? We can go to, if somebody's in a recovery, they can go to these recovery meetings and do the recovery, type of stuff. One of us is in a internship program right now, getting their master's degree. So, um, that's what they want to do, right? They want to go into the field and help. We said that, what is another way we can do the same thing we're doing now, have fun, get to be us, right? Just to be us, have general normal conversations around everything, and be able to help people. So we said, let's do a podcast. And so that's what sparked the idea. And then ever since, it's been like one thing, right after another. And it's, we talk about everything. Doesn't matter what it is. Author can come on with their book, and it has nothing to do with mental health. And we'll be talking about the book, and 10 minutes in the conversation, I'll be like, oh, that's a great, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, and I mean, and we'll tie it right back into, maybe it's related to men's issues. I don't know, but that's a question that we're always finding ways to innovate, and improvise, and to spread awareness. Kind of like yourself with the books, seeing what's out there, seeing who's got what out there.
That's so inspiring. Thank you so much because, yeah, I mean, I think it takes a lot of courage to come on and talk about those hard to talk about topics and just be real about them and put yourself out there. Yeah, what you're passionate about.
Absolutely. You're right. It takes courage. So let me ask you this then. Okay. You being a woman, being an author, going into, at least even starting the path to being an author and going through the initial processes, and also struggling with, eating disorder early on in life. Like what m- how do you feel like being a woman has impacted that?
I don't know if it's that much different. I mean, your family of origin is the family of origin you have. You're taught certain skills, I think, coming up, and I don't know if that'd been different if I was a male or a female. Um, I think a male with an eating disorder has a harder road because it's not as common, um, but it's not uncommon. Like, I think the statistics are 1 in 5, people with eating disorders are male, so 20% is not that uncommon. Um, but I think sometimes it is a harder road because it is predominantly the recovery system, or like, uh, the recovery meetings are predominantly female. Um, and even within that, like, I went into an Overeaters Anonymous for the first time, and I was the only anorexic there. So, I mean, there are many instances with many people who you're gonna be the minority, um, and you just kinda have to get through that. And maybe that gives you a little bit harder skin than someone else, I don't know. So what was the question? I don't think being a woman affects, I mean, I think weight is can sometimes be more of a woman's issue. Like, sometimes women maybe have more pressure to look a certain way or be a certain way, and that they see more value sometimes than they're pressured to see more value in that than men do. Which is sad. I just let my hair go gray, and I was like, "What the heck? What am I spending all this money for? My hair is getting unhealthier, and, like, it's my hair, like, who cares?" So, yeah, I think those are just little steps in, like, just realizing, "Hey, I am what I am, and I can't change it, so let's just go with it."
No, and I appreciate you giving your perception on that. Do you feel like it has impacted you going into being an author?
No, it's interesting because I was interviewing someone, and they were like, "Oh, not many fantasy authors are men." I'm like, "Where have you been?" Like, they're like, "No, if you walk into a bookstore, there are all these big female fantasy author names." I'm like, "Well, listen to my podcast because most of the fantasy author people that come on here are men." So I think it's just people's perception at any point in time and snapshots that we get, especially with social media and all these things. I mean, we look at one thing one time and they're going to show it to you again and again and again, right? Um, so I haven't felt like there's any prejudice against men or women, from either side in the author community. I feel like authors, especially in the indie author community, are very supportive and always trying to lift each other up and help each other out. So I haven't really felt that at all, which has been good.
Well, what hey, I'm glad to hear that. I am glad to hear that. So, let me ask you this then, all right? Because you wrote your first 4 books. How long did it take you to write those first 4 books? As
Well,
far
like
as
I
the
said, my first manuscript was like 160,000 words. It was huge, long, and that took me like 7 years to do, just because just doing it 1 hour a night in the evening, and not really thinking that I would do anything with it, just kind of amusing myself. And it was very cathartic. I think there was healing involved in just getting all this out, writing it all down. Um, and then my sister-in-law was very big on a reader, and then I had a friend who was an editor and indie author, and they both read it, and they said, "We really like this. You should do something with this." And I was like, "Eh." And so I eventually gave it to my editor. She helped me. She fixed it because it was horrible. I mean, it wasn't a horrible story, but I didn't know how to creative write. I'd never done a plot. I mean, in high school, maybe I didn't really remember. I'd never done a plot. It read like a screenplay. It was lots of dialogue. So she helped me fix it, and I queried some agents, and a couple of them came back. Harlequin came back and wanted me to make it into one book, and I thought, I don't know if I can do that in one book. So I just decided to indie publish, and yeah, the first manuscript was broken into 2 books, and then very quickly after that, I think the next year I released one more book, and the year after that, one more book. So within 3 years, I had the series complete with the 4 books.
Wow. Dedication, that's what we call dedication right there. 100%. I love it, I love it. I mean, because think about it, it takes you, a few years to write it, right? Because 'Cause you're not really spending time on it, right? And then you let a couple people read it and they tell you, "Hey, this is amazing work. You really should think about publishing it." And you follow through with it. Then 20 something books after that, that is a huge, huge goal, huge milestone. So, do you feel like that is a part of your I'm gonna use a word, I don't really particularly like it, but I'm gonna use it anyways. Do you feel like that is a treatment plan of yours, or like, this is part of like what helps me to stay in the recovery process from anorexia. So therefore I'm going to do it. Like tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a creative side of me that I really wouldn't have told you was there before because my background is in science. I did biotech research, um, and I moved into the patent area in my career. So I was doing technical writing, which I enjoyed the technical writing part, but I would have never told you I was a creative person. But then when I look back at my career, like when I was doing the research, what I loved is trying to figure out how to figure out the answer. Like you have to design the experiment to get the answer you want, right? So that's what I kind of would stay up at night and think about when I was doing my job. So I began to see that as more of a creative process. And then I think my brain just needed it. Like I said, I was a, a stay-at-home mom to 3 young kids, and I needed something else for my brain to do. And that was a good, healthy outlet for me rather than running 3 hours a day, right? um, so, I mean, I don't know that it kept me from doing something else, but it definitely kept my brain active and that maybe my overall life was more balanced because I had something for myself that was just for me and not for my kids or my husband or my house or my dog or whatever else it was. Yeah.
Mm, that is amazing to hear. So 20 books later, like, do you really feel like that is an addiction or is it something that you just enjoy?
I love it. I mean, I I mean, I don't see not doing it now. Like I constantly have these thoughts of these characters and these worlds and so I can't see myself not doing it now, but it's kind of just part of who I am and it's the outlet. I guess, everybody has whatever outlet they need for either creativity or, whether they garden or work on cars or whatever they do for that downtime of their brain. And maybe some people need it to less or more degrees. Um, and so I guess that's just what I've picked for that downtime that my brain needs.
No, I'm right there with you. There's so many things I do now, and like if you were to ask me to do something completely different or stop doing it, I would feel completely off. Because I feel like it's become a part of who I am, right? Kind of like how writing has become just like a major part of your life, like it's who you are. And so, I mean, I've literally thought about doing, different doing things different, right? And I'm like, but it's really a part of who I am, and I'm gonna miss it. Like I know I'm gonna miss it if I were to stop doing it. And so, why stop, right?
Right, if it brings you joy, and why stop, right?
Right, right, right. Because life is all about enjoying life. It's not about living a glum life, and that's what recovery is. It's literally learning to be okay with that, with not being okay, and being able to go through and enjoy it to the best of our ability.
That's interesting that you said enjoy not being okay, but are you really not okay, or is it just, a different normal? So, I don't know, that's what I would say.
Huh. That's interesting. That is a great question. You are questioning the host now. That is
Yeah,
a
because I'm like, "Wait a minute, why is that defined as not okay?"
look. You got a point. You do have a point. I never thought about it from that perception.
I mean, I would have defined myself as not okay at one point too, but now I just define myself as different and a little, like, out of the norm. But there's so many, like, there's such a, what do you call it? A scale. That's not the right word. I can't figure it out. But
No.
anyway, so yeah.
Well, no, and I think one of the things that I typically say, uh, the only thing I know about normal is what the washing machine says. It's the onlyest thing. I can't speak on anything outside of that, as far as it being normal. So I think you're right. I think you're right. It is, it's not that we're not okay. I think it's just the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I grew up with a very and that's coming from my background too, right? I grew up with a very narrow definition of what success was and what your life was supposed to look like, and so I think, now I'm like, "Wait a minute, no." Like, there is no normal. There's everybody's path, and most people have I mean, some people have kinda similar paths, right? But a lot of people have similar, not similar paths too, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, and it's typically what I like to say. I grew up in what mental health calls a functional dysfunctional home, right? And And I say functional because I had the brother I was supposed to have, the parents I was supposed to have, the grandparents, the aunts, uncles, cousins, everybody I was supposed to have, right? Everything worked the way it was supposed to work. It's not that it was, it's like you said, right? It's just like you described it. I had a very, very narrow idea or ideals early on. And it's through life that I think through experience that we get to learn and expand that horizon.
Yeah, and some people have those broader experiences growing up and some people don't. So it's just, what what you grew up on, what you saw and what yeah. So
No, 100, absolutely, absolutely. So let me ask you this then, okay? You've written about your anorexia. And you've written many other types of genres of books. What's next?
oh wow, that's a big question. So I just finished well, I last summer, July 2025, I just published the finale in my Fae series, which is the Realm Chronicles series, and that is a crossover series to the Kingdom Journal series. So basically, a two series, 10 books about witches and vampires and fairies. And that seems really weird to me. Like I finished this whole saga um, and obviously I can kind of go back to it and go back to some characters in it. But now, and I also have a romance genre, which is I'll publish a new book in this year. So in 2026. So I'm excited about that. I have a new romance coming out that's just in editing stages. I also have a character I'm excited about from the Realm Chronicles series, who is a Nyx character. So she is a hybrid fish character, which is not written about quite as much. So that will be, I have a short story already out about that that will be coming out somewhere. I don't know where yet. But usually what happens is I develop short stories around these characters and then they become full-length novels somehow. So that probably is the direction I'm heading down and we'll see from there.
I love it. Any any more of your life history that you were planning on putting in a book or putting in some books, not just a, but some?
Probably not. I think I'm good with talking about myself. I do talk about I mean, I do talk about gratitude a lot now. Um, just from 2020 and like 2019 to like 2023, 24, which I mean, it was hard for a lot of us, but it was very hard for me and I had a lot going on. So I talk about gratitude a lot because that has very much changed my outlook in the past year and a half, 2 years. Um, and so I just did an article on that, which was super fun, just looking at how I kind of pulled myself up by the bootstraps and got myself out of that, like, okay, everything is bad. There's nothing good. And really, I did it with the help of a friend. We pledged to like every time we met up to say three things we were grateful for, and we could bitch and moan about whatever else, but we had to say three things. So that just starting small like that has really helped me. So I talk about that a little bit sometimes. Um, So I'm a big believer in gratitude these days, and starting to talk about or think about, what is it called? It's not prayer, manifestation, which is another idea of like prayer, right? So yeah, that's my maybe newer thing that I haven't been doing as much, that I'm thinking, you can do that. So
I think you can. I got a buddy of mine who's also a co-host, right? And his name is Ruben. And I remember years ago when I first met him, he would talk about this manifestation. And he would always say, he'd always go back to this book or whatever, poem or something. Just I don't remember. But he would always go back to it. He'll be like, have you ever read, I think it was The Secret or something like that. I don't remember. I'm like, no, I've never read it. And he was like, well, it talks about manifestations, what you think, therefore you get. And I'm like, and so I used to argue with him all the time. Man, that ain't true. Just that, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it ain't true. It ain't never going to happen. Uh, and the older I get, the more I realize that if I think certain things, I'm most likely act on said things or said thought processes. Therefore, I most likely will harvest in my life. And I never put all three of those together until I'll say probably about the last 3 years, maybe 4 years. I've actually been really I've gotten away from that. So now when he actually brings it up and he mentions it, I'm in 100% agreement with him. I'm like, dude, I absolutely agree with you, you know, and what you're saying is, I think needs to be talked about more.
and it can be just thought about like positive outlook. Like if you keep telling yourself you can't do something, then you're going to start believing you can't do it and you're not even going to try. But if you thought, oh, maybe I could do that, maybe that's the first thought, maybe I have some skills related to that, then you're like, okay, well, I'll try that first skill. Oh, I'll try that second skill needed. Oh, now I have two skills. Now, so I think it does. Like the way we think does affect the way we act, does affect the way, what happens in our lives. So
Absolutely. No, I
and
could
maybe
not agree
affects
more.
what we see too, because sometimes my manifestation is like, well, I hope so and so is happier in their lives. So I might start to see, and so maybe it's a little bit skewed, right? You might start to see when they're happier rather than who knows if they're really happier. But
Right, right.
it makes
No,
me
no.
happier. So
Right. Oh Lord. No. Oh, it is so interesting that you mentioned that because I remember early on, I got a set up with a spiritual mentor, and he was like, "Kev, I want you to pray. Choose three people you hate and you can't stand, and you just hope they die, and just go ahead and pray for them and pray for them until I tell you to stop." And I'm like, "What else, dude? Like, what else?" And I remember when I first started off praying, I would use some explicatives. I think that's how I pronounce it, right? I would use that in my prayers. And then over time, my prayers would become significantly nicer, much more positive. And then all of a sudden, I was happy for them. I was loving toward them. I was tolerant of them. I cared for them. Right. My whole perception went from pure hate and I hope you die to, oh my God, you're absolutely an amazing individual. I love you dearly. If there's anything that you ever need, please let me know, type stuff. And I don't know what it was from. I
well,
don't know if
release the hate that you had, right? I mean, the hate was a negative feeling that you were experiencing. So it was harming you more. Obviously, it wasn't, maybe it was harming them in some way, but it was harming you more. They didn't have someone positively manifesting for them, but now they do, which may be positive. But anyway, the hate was like it was harming you too. So to let go of that made you like a lighter, happier person, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. So everything that you're talking about, I truly do believe, and it's all about, the power of thought. It's about the power of thought that, it goes back into manifestation, right? We manifest what we think. Therefore, if I think about gratitude, I'm going to practice more gratitude, make gratitude our attitude. That's a big saying of mine.
Yeah, it took me like a year of having these signs up on my wall of like hating them. I was like, okay, I'm gonna take the signs down and actually do something now.
Right. Right. Oh my Lord. Right. Oh wow. So listen, I can keep going now for another 2 3 hours talking to you. I've enjoyed the best out of it. I
I have
really
too. Thank you so much.
absolutely. So I gotta here on the podcast we do a couple of things at the end to wrap us up. One, if people want you to maybe be a mentor, be a teacher, be a guide, even be a speaker on their show, um, and want to know, you know, how did they get in contact with you? Do you charge anything? Do you not charge anything? Anything of that sort?
Right. So my website is Tricia Copeland, TriciaCopeland. There is a way to contact me and or my press person, who is Nikki Mickelson of Creative Edge. So you can get in contact with me either one of those ways. Yes, speaking engagements would always be paid. Fun things like this I do for my enjoyment, and hopefully people get to know me in my books. Was that your only question? Yes, I think so far.
Right. Oh, all right. What would you hope that somebody takes away from watching or listening to this?
Just that if they're experiencing whatever, that there is a way out and that there is hope. There are people that can help you. Um, and, finding those resources and believing that you're worthy of finding those resources. And you are worthy of finding those resources. I believe everyone is. So, National Eating Disorders Association has great resources for people with eating disorders. And there's so many resources out there for depression or any other mental health challenge.
Absolutely. Folks, you heard it. Can you state that resource again for us?
National Eating Disorders Association, NEDA, I think it's .org, or it's probably .org on the website, but they have, yeah, tons of resources.
That is a huge, huge resource for people. So if you are struggling, please reach out, seek help. Most important question here. Okay. What is your
Let's
call
hear
to
it.
action?
My call to action. Oh, go to my website and look at my books. I have 2 short stories, a romance and a fantasy. If you sign up for my newsletter, then you can download them and see if you'd like to read more.
I love it. I love it. Now, I am going to ask you, would you be willing to be a guest speaker on somebody else's podcast?
Of course, yeah, that's super fun.
All right. I will see if I can't get you in contact with her
Well, thank you very much.
and I'll forward you her information and I'll forward her information, your information. So listen, Miss Tricia, sincerely, humbly do appreciate it. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate it. It's great talking to you.
Absolutely.